You sit there, swallowed by a silence that claws at your throat. 2 days since her last message. 2 days where the words you long for didn't come. That silence. It's sharp, suffocating. It's the kind of quiet that screams beneath your skin, louder than any fight or argument. You run the scene over and over, her eyes catching yours just a moment too long, the fragile warmth in her voice that hinted at something real, something worth holding on to. And now, that warmth has vanished, and the chasm between you grows wide and cold. They told you loyalty would be your armor, that standing firm, waiting, would earn you a place in her heart. But what if loyalty is the shackle that's chained you to a rejection you never saw coming? What if that sword you brandished so proudly, your unwavering truth, is the very thing that's been turned against you? You carried loyalty like a heavy blade, thinking it would carve a path to her, but instead, it's cut through you. So here you are, sitting with your own breath loud in the silence, wondering whether this absence is abandonment or initiation. Maybe this void is less a punishment and more a test by fire, a crucible forged not to break you, but to shape you. Every second she withholds, every moment of distance she creates, is the weight you carry on your shoulders. The question now isn't whether you'll fall apart in it, but whether you'll stand taller, sharper, and colder than before. This silence isn't empty. It's the battlefield where your raw, silent strength is hammered into steel. And when you rise from it, you won't be the man she left waiting. You'll be the man who learned how to endure the cold, who made the silence his ally rather than his enemy. Loyalty isn't a promise that you'll be kept. It's a fire you walk through alone, and only the steel-hearted emerge whole. The space between her words is not a void. It's the forge where your new self takes shape. You were told to lay your heart bare like a warrior tossing down his sword, believing the truth of your soul would earn you honor. You were trained to speak your feelings, to be open and raw, thinking that transparency was the currency of respect. But where does that get you? You open up, and it echoes back like a hollow cave. Empty, cold, unforgiving. Her eyes don't stay locked on you. They wander away, like the world folds itself closed the moment you drop your defenses. You show loyalty, stand steady like a rock battered by waves, expecting it to be seen as strength. Instead, it renders you invisible, like a ghost in a crowd that doesn't hear your voice. Why does loyalty make us invisible? Why is commitment mistaken for weakness, like a forgotten relic gathering dust? You give everything, your time, your silence, your steady presence, and find the reward is dismissal. Not once have they said, "I see you." Instead, you get sideways glances, subtle shoves, or worse, cold indifference. Does steadfast devotion mean you're supposed to vanish? To become background noise in a life that demands the roar of challenge rather than the quiet force of endurance? It's a cruel paradox carved from stone and fire. Strength demands you be unmovable, yet when you hold your ground, you're branded as cold. When you soften, you're labeled weak. You stand at the crossroads of contradiction, muscles coiled for battle but heart peeled raw beneath armor no one asked you to wear. You try to navigate this minefield with a map drawn from ancient promises. Be a man who feels deeply but doesn't break, who loves openly but never falls apart. But the reward for this is silence. You're trained to be emotionally available, yet you're marooned on islands of neglect, surrounded by waves of unmet expectations and unanswered words. They told you this path was worth walking, that your sacrifice would earn respect. Yet every unopened message, every passing day with no reply, sinks a stone heavier in your gut. Why didn't love's offering come with recognition? Why did vulnerability turn into a gathering storm with no shelter? This isn't just pain. It's the weight of betrayal by a world that asked you to trust, only to leave you standing alone in the wreckage. You wanted to be seen as more than just a provider or a muscle. You wanted to be known, understood, respected. And maybe that's the cruelest truth. You peeled back your soul, only to find that some arenas are built for warriors who fight in silence, not for those who bleed in the open. Loyalty betrayed doesn't make you less. It carves into you a sharper edge, something colder, something quieter. The world doesn't owe you respect. It's something you take, forged in the stillness left behind after disappointment. So ask yourself, why are you still here? Because despite all the dismissal and all the noise, you are the man who endures, the man who refines pain into silent power. That's your real battle, and it doesn't need to be heard to be loud. Here's the truth that cuts deeper than any blade. Pain is not your enemy, not your weakness. It's the whetstone beneath your feet, dulling your edges only to sharpen your resolve. Imagine yourself as a storm-tested oak, rooted deep in the earth, battered by howling winds and relentless rain. Each gust doesn't break you. It buries your roots deeper, forcing you to stand taller against the chaos. This is no idle metaphor. There's a reason the oak stands long after the wildfire, long after the storm has passed. It's because it learns to wear pain like armor, to find strength in silence. You don't fight the storm, you become the quiet force it can't tear down. I remember a brother I knew, one of those rare men who stopped chasing what never wanted to be caught. He was caught in that quiet prison many men taste but never name, the sting of rejection, unspoken and unmoved by angry words or bitter pride. Instead of baring teeth or losing himself in the chase, he stepped back, not to surrender, but to reclaim. He let the noise and the weight slip off him like a worn cloak, and what remained was a man grounded in something ancient and unmoving. He didn't become cold, he became steady, a mountain refusing to be carved by next moment's disappointment. Others spun in storms of doubt or rage, but he held fast, a silent harbor in the storm. What made him formidable was less his strength in action and more his discipline in stillness. He redirected the energy that once chased echoes into the work that couldn't be stolen or broken, the sharpening of his own mind, body, and mission. Like a stoic sailor gripping the wheel through the wildest seas, he knew the storm would not be his enemy. It was the constant, the force to lean into, to test his mettle again and again. And in that surrender to the process, not the outcome, he found an unshakable core, a presence that pulled others close without a single word or show. That is the power you carry when you choose stoic detachment. You reclaim yourself from the scratch marks of pain and rejection, and in the space that silence creates, you craft something untouchable, a legacy written in iron and quiet strength. You don't become a king by demanding a throne. You become one by sitting unmoved on a rock after the battle's noise has died. The pain you feel now is not a monument to your failure. It's a marker on the path you're meant to forge, one disciplined step at a time. This isn't a promise of ease, but a certainty of becoming. The storms will come, you will bend, and when the winds drop, you'll stand taller than ever before, rooted, relentless. This is the warrior's way, to face the storm and learn how to wear it as your skin. There's a sacred code that only a few understand, the unspoken laws you carry when the world burns your bridges and calls you less than what you are. Detachment is the first blade you forge in that fire. Not cold apathy, but a refined steel that cuts through the noise without staining your hands. You watch storms rage around you, but you don't anchor yourself to the chaos or let every insult or slight settle under your skin. You hold your gaze steady because you know control isn't about bending others to your will. It's about mastering the battlefield inside, choosing your response like a warrior picks his fight. When the night gnaws at your nerves, detachment keeps you at a distance far enough to see clearly but close enough to act with precision. Emotional control isn't about bottling everything up like a caged animal. It's knowing that the raw energy surging inside you, the anger, the hurt, the frustration, are like wild seas under a storm-dark sky. You don't drown in them. Instead, you become the lighthouse unwavering on the rocks. That light doesn't waver because it's not moved by the size of the waves. It's anchored deep in rock, a beacon burning through the fog of your own mind. You don't let your emotions write the map of your life. You take the pen back and chart the course with deliberate strokes that reflect your strength, not your impulse. Mission first. Your purpose isn't a whispered hope or a distant dream. It is the fire pounding in your chest with every breath, relentless and consuming, a furnace that consumes all doubts and distractions until nothing remains but the iron will to move forward. Your mission carves a path through the wilderness of loss, disrespect, and rejection. It's the silent drum that marches your steps when the world drops away and all you're left with is the sound of your own heartbeat. When others doubt or turn away, your purpose doesn't. It drags you out of the ashes, across miles of empty ground, forward, always forward, because a man with a mission is never lost, just temporarily off the beaten path. Self-reliance is a fortress built stone by stone, brick by brick, in silence. The world will tell you that you need validation, approval, connections, even love to survive. But you need yourself more than any of those. You are the cornerstone that no earthquake can shift. This is not loneliness. This is sufficiency. The man who stands alone, confident in his own shadow, knows that his worth is not borrowed or granted by others. She might leave, friends might disappear, the job might vanish in the fog of economic storms, but your foundation is steel reinforced. You are the architect of your legacy, the one accountable for the structure of your life. Your ambitions don't need applause. They're fueled from within, silent and sure. Finally, presence is the hardest kind of power. Not the noise of a man shouting for attention, but the quiet authority of a man who occupies space simply by being. It's the kind of presence that doesn't demand acknowledgement, it commands it. When you walk into a room, people feel the weight of your steadiness before you say a word. You don't have to prove anything because your actions, your calm confidence, your silent fire do it all for you. This presence extends beyond proximity. It's emotional unshakability, the idea that you are there fully, even when unseen, unbothered by tempests of doubt or distraction. It is the final form of strength, felt and respected without a single syllable. Adopt these principles not as an act but as the very blood running through your veins. They will shape every choice, every step, every breath you take. Because a man forged by fire, anchored in his own truth, moves through the world with a power that demands nothing and owns everything. You walked through hell and never raised your voice. You don't explain. You elevate. You've come through fire most men don't even know exists. It didn't break you. That's not luck or some second chance fate handed over. It's the unshakable product of discipline carved out in silence, far from the noise and eyes that wanted you small. You are no longer the man who rose and fell under the weight of others' opinions, no longer defined by rejection, disrespect, or the cracks in your reflection. That version is gone. What stands now is forged in resolve, cut from the steel of your darkest hours, shaped by your own relentless hand. This is the moment you stop bending to storms you cannot control and become the architect of the ones you will shape with your own breath and fire. The pain you carried was never your chains. It was the calloused strength beneath your skin waking. It taught a harsh truth most won't face. That loss is not an end, but the sharp edge that carves a sharper self. You don't rise because life handed you light. You rise because you walked through hell and never raised your voice. So own this silence. Be the man who builds from the wreckage, who constructs his life not by fleeing the darkness, but by commanding it. Say it now, deep and steady, with no hesitation. I am defined by my journey through silence, cut from the steel of resolve and set on a path of boundless mastery. Let those words settle in the quiet spaces where doubt once lived. This is your legacy, an unspoken roar echoing long after the world has stopped listening. Proof of a spirit no fire could ever consume. Your next steps aren't tentative. They are deliberate. They are the march of a man who stands tall, unshakable, and undeniably powerful. Say it loud without speaking. I rise from the stillness stronger than before. I lead in silence.